Do you have a love box, or a love drawer, or a love envelope? Do you know what I'm talking about? This is mine. About ready to fall apart here. This envelope is filled with messages, with old cards and letters from people who like me and believe in me and have encouraged me and stood by me and stuck with me. In other words, this is my love treasure. Now, everybody needs it. For when I'm having a down day, I often pull it out. And I reread these things to remind me of who I am and what I'm about. Among the documents that are in this envelope, there are anniversary cards stretching now back 30 years from Gene, and birthday cards. There's Father's Day cards from our sons, and there's "You're the greatest granddaddy" messages from Olivia, which she just recently gave me a cup. I mean to bring that to you. She found it. Greatest granddaddy. There's also messages in this envelope from people in my home church in Indiana who watched me grow up, and they wrote me letters and sent me cards when I first moved away from home, and I have saved them. There are cards from folks in my very first church that I served, when I was some 23 years of age, and when I left that church, they sent me off with lots of well wishes, telling me what God was going to do through my life. Now, if the house were to catch fire, after I got Gene and the 3 dogs and the cat, well, maybe the cat, out the door, I would go back to this envelope. That's how much this means to me. Everybody needs a love treasure. Reading today's scripture got me thinking about this envelope. For I bet that Timothy saved this letter from his friend and mentor, the Apostle Paul, and I bet he placed it in his love envelope. Now, this letter might look to us just like another book in the Bible, but to Timothy, this was something to treasure. It seems that Paul had taken young Timothy under his wing. He was to Paul what some might call a protege. A protege. Paul had helped Timothy grow in his faith, had helped him grow as a young minister, and Timothy had also helped Paul to know that what Paul had begun would outlast Paul, would live on beyond Paul. You see, Paul was on the downside of the mountain. For his career and his ministry were coming to a close. And it warmed Paul's heart to know that there was someone with the gifts of young Timothy to pick up the mantle and to go forward. Recently, 2 of our sister churches in this ministry, Boulevard Baptist and First Baptist, where Kelly comes from, and others who are here, Donna's here today, and First Baptist. Those 2 churches ended pastorates that had been 25 years or more. I don't know if I'm going to make it 25 years here. I think I'd be in my 80s. I'm probably not. But what has blessed both of those congregations, after such distinguished service by gentlemen who had pastored those churches for that many years, they now have young ministers who've come along with great talent and gifts to shepherd those churches for the next 25 years. That's how it works in God's kingdom, and that's what Timothy was to Paul. In the introduction to the book of 2 Timothy, in my Bible, it says these words. Some suggest 2 Timothy, the letter of 2 Timothy, that Paul wrote to Timothy, was Paul's last will and testament for Timothy, his beloved child. But others believe the main concern of the letter is to encourage a timid yet gifted pastor to live out his calling in the power of the Spirit with an unabashed commitment to the gospel's truth. As I read through Paul's words to Timothy, what I take as the core of the message that Paul is giving to this young minister is this: say something with your life, Timothy. Let your life be your sermon. Speak good news through how you live. Teach others through your example. Let God show up in you. Don't be embarrassed or ashamed to allow God to show up in you. Amen. Let your life say something worth listening to. That is what I hear Paul telling Timothy. Let God show up in you. Tony Campolo, who is a writer, gifted writer, speaker, I would also almost call him a Christian comedian, also served as a professor at Eastern College in Pennsylvania, and one of his books tells of a sermon his pastor delivered. He had remembered it. Do you ever remember sermons? Anyway, the title of this sermon was Titles or Testimony. He said the pastor was preaching one day to the young people in the church, and he said to them, children, listen up. You are going to die. Now, you don't think you're going to die. You know, young people don't think they're going to die. You don't think you're going to die, but you're going to die. They're going to take you out to the cemetery one day. They're going to drop your box into a hole, and then they're all going to go back to the church and eat potato salad. That's how it goes. And he went on saying, when you were born, you were the only one who was crying. Everybody else was happy. But that's not important. Now here's what's important. What will happen when you die? Will you be happy and everyone else be crying? Because you're missed. You see, he wanted the kids to realize there's a way to live that makes a difference in life. You can strive all day long to achieve great heights and gain great titles, and that's all good and worthy. But what makes a life great is not the title that you hold. For you see, we all can't hold big titles. What makes a life great isn't the title you hold, it's the testimony you told about how many lives you touched, people you've helped, people who were changed because of you. And then that old preacher went on to say, there was Moses, remember Moses? There was Moses, and then there was Pharaoh. Well, now Pharaoh had the title, didn't he? Yes. He had the powerful position, but Moses had the truth. Amen. Moses had the testimony. And then there was Nebuchadnezzar. Remember that guy, king of Babylon? He had all kinds of power in that position, King Nebuchadnezzar. He had the title, but Daniel, remember Daniel from the Bible? Daniel had the testimony. And then there was the rich man and Lazarus. You see, the rich man had the bank account and the house and the servants and the status and the success. He had the title, but Lazarus had the testimony. And then there was Pilate and Jesus. You see, Pilate was a governor. He had status and power and a great title. But Jesus had the testimony. What will define you in life? Will it be a title you hold? The position of authority you have in life? We all can't have those, can we? Or will it be the testimony of a life well lived in Christ? You know something? You all are not the easiest congregation to preach to. Did you realize that?
Yes, sir.
You see, what makes this church so special is also what makes it very challenging. For we all don't come from the same place here on Sunday mornings. We've already talked about it. But here is what makes the gospel of Jesus Christ so powerful. You see, it doesn't matter where you come from. You could have slept on the most elegant satin sheets in a master suite overlooking the in-ground pool last night. Or you could have slept on the concrete slab of an old rundown hillside. It does not matter, for we can still have a testimony. We can still let God show up in our lives. We can still make a difference, can't we? A difference in our world. We can still share hope with somebody who has no hope. We can still offer kindness to someone who's hurting and forgiveness to someone who's done us wrong. And we can still be a flicker of light to someone who is struggling in the darkness. You see, we don't have to have a title to do all of that, for we all have the capacity and the potential for God to show up in us. We are all one. And so today, a week late, we celebrate World Communion Day. Last week, and again today in many places, all around this beautiful planet, people like us and people totally different from us come to the Lord's table. And why are we here? Why are any of us here? For we all realize how much we need God's grace. For it does not matter where we came from. We need God's grace. And so, we do what Jesus teaches us to do. And when we do that, God shows up through our lives. In a book I just started reading by a lady by the name of Rachel Held Evans, who I recently learned just passed away at a very young age. She writes this about communion, the meal that we're about to share. She said the first thing the world knew about Christians that they ate together. At the beginning of each week, they gathered, rich and poor, slaves and free, Jews and Gentile, women and men. They gathered to celebrate the day the whole world changed, to offer a toast to resurrection. While each community worshipped a bit differently, it appears most practice communion by enjoying a full meal together with such special prayers of thanksgiving for the bread and the wine. They remember Jesus with food and stories and laughter and tears and debate and discussion and cleanup. They thank God not only for the bread that came from the earth, but also for the bread that came from heaven to nourish the whole world. According to church historians, the focus of these early communion services was not on Jesus' death, but it was on Jesus' friendship, his presence made palpable among his followers by the tastes, sounds, and smells he loved. And so this morning we come to the table together, to this table right here, and in just a few moments to the tables in the fellowship hall. We come to the table together because mysteriously, miraculously, when we gather together, God shows up. That's right. God shows up in our being together, just like God shows up in our individual lives when we open our hearts to God and we live our lives for God and we treat others the way Jesus wants us to treat them, and we deal with life stressors the way Jesus dealt with them. God shows up. But when we come to the table and we acknowledge that we all need his grace, God does what? Shows. Let's pray. Prepare now our hearts, O Lord, to humbly, reverently, lovingly gather at your table, to partake of those blessed elements, simple elements of bread and juice in a cup. But in our receiving them together, you show up in us. And when you show up in us, whew, the world will take notice. And things will change.
Amen.
This is our prayer to the Lord.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.